Halftime show, Terry Ford, Ed Bird's running the controls. We got Corey here, our new guy. We got Austin's trying to learn. So we got a ton of people running around here. And we're going to do this till 3 o'clock here on the game. And of course, Tyler off enjoying his 1-year anniversary. I lost the pool, Ed Bird. They made it a year. I'm kidding. No, Tyler off enjoying a little anniversary celebration with the wife. He'll be back on Monday, we think. And we'll get some good stories about him hanging out in Charleston for a weekend. All right, obviously last night, you can't script a better W for South Carolina. Your pitching dominates a good hitting team in East Tennessee State, and your offense continues to stay on this roll that they've gotten on, especially since the lineup tweaking and changing that Mark Kingston has done. We're going to hear from Kingston here in a second. But you had 4 home runs in the game. You score a ton of runs. You're 10 running East Tennessee State. You win 15-2. Pitching-wise, you shut down, like I said, a really good offense. Just a good victory all the way around. Let's look at the offense real quick, Ed Bird. Let's go to cuts. Let's go. You know what? Let's hold off on that. Let's go to cut 8. I want to focus also on the position changes that made this lineup a more potent offensive lineup. Basically, Gavin Casas going to third, Ethan Petrie coming into first base, and Talmadge LeCroy moving to short. Hit the position changes there, Ed Bird. That will be cut.
Yeah, I'm confident with them out there. I know Gavin made the error on that hopper today, but I thought he made the right decision on the play. He just didn't make the play, but I feel good with them out there. I think they're getting more confident the more they play. We were thinking as the game started to get away and we had some distance score-wise, should we get them out of there, but the decision was made that it's a new infield, keep them out there, let them continue to get their feet wet and get reps. So I feel good with them out there, and obviously what it's done to our offense has been pretty special. Well, this was a borderline quad 1 team too. I think they were 52 coming into the night. So there's actually, by playing us on the road tonight, they may have snuck into that top 50. And look, you play to win every game, and we have as many quad 1 challenges this year as anybody in the country. And I would say that we have more top 5 games than anybody in the country. And there's a huge difference. And I said that the other day. But you want to make sure that when you're playing teams that are top 5, top 10, you just hold your own, and we've done that. And then when you play teams outside of that number, you want to try to dominate the whole. And so I think we've done that. I think we've won most of the games we should win. I think we've only had 1 midweek loss all season, and I think that speaks to the depth we have on our team.
There's Kingston talking about the position changes and the schedule and winning in the midweek and beating quad 2 and quad 3 and quad 4 teams if you're looking at RPI and things of that nature. And we'll go back to the position changes. Yes, defensively, you're better with Will Tippett at short, Talmadge LeCroy at third, and Gavin Casas at first, and Ethan Petrie in the outfield or DHing or wherever you're going to put that bat in the lineup. But because you want to get your offense kick-started to be more consistent, and you had the injury to Will Tippett, and you gave Ellis a little run at short, but then you're sitting there thinking, okay, if I want to maximize myself offensively, I'm going to move these pieces. And so you put a third baseman in LeCroy, who has played short in the past, in moments. Now is your shortstop. Gavin Casas, we're going to hear from Casas about, his experience playing third base. But you move Casas to third, he's really a first baseman. You bring in Ethan Petrie, who's been playing the outfield or DHing, and now he's going to take over at first. The thought is, defensively, are you a little weaker? Yes. So far, it hasn't bitten you at all, but offensively, it seems like you really found a groove. You have a 3-game series with Kentucky, this game last night. Offensively, you're cooking. And you hope you'll continue to cook against a Missouri team that has struggled this season. So, and look, momentum's a thing. The joke about, hitting is contagious. Hitting is contagious. Also, lack of hitting at times can be contagious. We saw the problems with runners in scoring position and runners on base this year. I felt like that almost was like, as soon as South Carolina got runners on, everybody in the dugout said, I don't want to hit. No. Bat was like a hand grenade. Everybody was struggling because a lot of times that gets in your head. Just like when you're hitting and everything's rolling, your confidence is just out of control. Everybody's wrestling for a bat to get to home plate. So this lineup is really locked in, especially since Coach Kingston made those moves, right before the Kentucky series to maximize the offense. And last night we saw maximization of the offense, I think that's a word, and also pitching shutting down a potent East Tennessee State offense. East Tennessee State is competing in the SoCon. Everyone was like third, fourth in the SoCon going into last night. And they have an excellent record. And it's really on the strength of that offense. Their pitching has been, and I'll be kind, all year. But their offense has carried that baseball team. South Carolina shut that down. After the first couple innings, East Tennessee State did zip at the plate. So a good night all the way around. And then if you hear the other part of that answer from Mark Kingston about winning against quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 teams, basically teams you should beat. I believe South Carolina's 18-2 in those games. And, like Mark said, they've lost one midweek all year. It was ugly, Georgia Southern, but that was it. They've handled their business in the midweek, and we've seen the last couple of years, even last season when this crew got to the Supers, they lost some midweek games. This year, only one, and that's it. And look, the strength of schedule has been a bear. It's top 5 in the country. It's not an excuse. It's reality. And South Carolina, and playing in those games against quad 1 teams where they're now, I think, 12-12, we talked about it. They were playing just well enough not to win. They were competing with the Arkansas and the Texas A&Ms. They just weren't getting over the hump and winning games and winning series. But they were competitive, and, we played the Kingston cuts before about, got to get over the hump. And we said, yeah, you do at some point. It's great to be competitive. It's great to stand toe-to-toe, but eventually, they got to raise your hand at the end of the fight. Hopefully the Kentucky series is the start of that. Missouri, not very good. We'll get more into Missouri probably tomorrow, maybe a little bit later in the show. Missouri, they struggle. They've had a rough year in Mizzou. So that's you hope you can go on the road and look. Kooky stuff happens in Columbia, Missouri. In every sport, it seems. But you should be able to pull 2 out of 3 against a below-average baseball team, no matter where you're playing. Playing here in Columbia, there in Columbia, you're playing in Afghanistan, you're playing in Canada, wherever, you should be able to pull 2 out of 3. Does that mean you will? Of course not. Florida struggled against Missouri. I think Missouri swept the Gators at Mizzou. But you need to handle your business. And so far, South Carolina this year has handled their business against teams they should beat. And you heard Mark talking about that. They've been beating up the teams they're better than. Hopefully that continues this weekend on the road against the Tigers. We shall see. Also, Coach Kingston, let's grab this one here, Ed Bird. Jake McCoy took the hill, freshman, got the start, hard thrower. Again, got room to grow and develop because he's a youngin'. But here's Coach Kingston talking about McCoy's performance.
Well, this was a borderline quad 1 team too. I think they were 52 coming into the night. So there's actually, by playing us on the road tonight, they may have snuck into that top 50. And look, you play to win every game, and we have as many quad 1 challenges this year as anybody in the country. And I would say that we have more top 5 games than anybody in the country. And there's a huge difference. And I said that the other day. But you want to make sure that when you're playing teams that are top 5, top 10, you just hold your own, and we've done that. And then when you play teams outside of that number, you want to try to dominate the whole. And so I think we've done that. I think we've won most of the games we should win. I think we've only had one midweek loss all season, and I think that speaks to the depth we have on our team.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, you've been moving pieces around to try to figure out your lineup, your pitching staff, and you're still winning the games that you should be winning. Now, Jake McCoy got to start, the freshman. Here's Coach Kingston, Cut 7, Ed Bird, talking about Jake's outing.
We knew the guys coming in the game out of the bullpen were going to try to get one inning out of each of them, and you got to get these guys in a rhythm. We play Wednesday this week, so it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we wanted to get them on smaller pitch counts, but also get them back in a good rhythm, get some confidence. And the reason we pitched Jake is because Jake is an extremely talented freshman. not many lefty freshmen in the country throw up to 96 miles an hour. He's gotten progressively better, and we just thought he deserved the opportunity. I think it's my fault that he gave up the 2 runs in that first inning. We pitched to the righty that was hitting over 500 on the year against lefties with a guy on deck that probably would have been a better matchup. And if we had done that, he might have not given up any runs in that inning. So I thought Jake handled himself pretty well today.
I mean, Jake's a lefty flinging like 96. That's some good arm talent. And even as a freshman, they have rolled him out there. And last night, and you heard Mark Kingston saying probably put him in a bad situation, but McCoy goes 2 innings, gives up 2 earned runs, and after that, nothing. Dean, Veach, McCreary, Quinn, and Gainey shut the door. From that point on, all zeros. Only 1 hit, matter of fact, for East Tennessee State after the first inning. And McCoy, an electric arm, young guy, and we'll just see how he develops. But that's some arm talent for a guy, for a freshman. And in a midweek, you give him a shot, you give him a chance to start. He's not going to go but a couple innings. It's sort of like we discussed this in the major leagues. It's called an opener. So you use Jake as your opener. Then you went to your bullpen. Your bullpen just slammed the door shut. Jake got some experience. And it's a good night all the way around. And if you look at McCoy, I mean, the ERA, you'll go, ooh. But just you're developing, and you're putting him on the mound, and you're putting him in the right situations to where, he can grow and learn and develop. And hopefully at some point, even this year, and it might be coming out of the bullpen in a regional or a super regional or wherever the case, that 96 from the left side might help you win a game, or at least keep you in a game or make a difference. All right, we'll get more baseball coming up after last night's win. Gavin Costas, Ethan Petrie yapping with the media after the game. We'll get some comments from both of those guys up next. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford hanging out. Ed Bird's here. Corey's here. Austin's here. You know what? If you want to stop on by, we got plenty of room. We'll put you in there. If you're driving by, pull over. We'll just have you hang out with Ed Bird. It's like there's free beer or something. I shouldn't have said that because that's not a bad idea. Let's talk to the guy that runs the place. All right, we'll come back in here, hear from Petrie and Costas next on the halftime show here on the game. Halftime show sponsored by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina here on the game. Terry Ford hanging. Tyler will be back on Monday, taking a few days off. Ed Bird's here. He's training session with Ed Bird today with Austin and Corey. And basically, it's very simple. Just watch what I do and do the opposite, and everything will be fine. All right, Ed Bird, let's jump into a couple cuts here. Gavin Casas, Ethan Petrie. And we talked about the lineup in the first segment, how Mark Kingston had tweaked the lineup, moving Gavin Casas from third base to third base defensively, bringing Ethan Petrie in from the outfield to play first. Talmadge LeCroy goes from third to short. Here is, first of all, let's get to Gavin Casas at cut 11. Casas talking about playing third base.
Yeah, as far as for me, I don't have much in-game competitive experience at third base, but I mean, we worked over there in the preseason, and we kind of knew this was going to be an emergency kind of situation. If this guy gets hurt or this guy goes down, you need to fill in. So I take reps over there pretty often. I mean, I kind of bounce around the infield during BP and stuff. I find it fun, but. Yeah, no, it's definitely a new experience, and still learning over there, and it's been fun so far. So can't complain.
I love it. I think it's a great, lefty righty almost lineup the whole way down, and I feel like, 1 through 9 there is not one hole. It's a scary lineup to pitch to, and I feel like we take our walks. We hit for damage, and we got the table setter at the top, and Austin Brinling has been amazing for us so far. So.
All right, so that's, first of all, that's Gavin Casas talking about playing third, and then there's Ethan Petrie about the lineup, the way they move the lineup around, and which is all this kind of goes hand in hand in what they're doing offensively and defensively. And so far defensively, again, there's been some moments plays haven't been made, but the defense, which does, weaken a bit with this new offensive, focused lineup. Defensively, it hasn't cost a game or it cost a bunch of unearned runs or anything of that nature. And offensively, this team has taken off the last 4 games. And Costa's talking about, I really don't play I've played a little third, in practice and in BP, but live game action, Costas is he's learning on the run. Now, Ethan Petrie, let's get cut 12, Ed. Ethan Petrie talking about playing first base.
I'm still fairly new to it, so I played in high school at first base some, and I played infield in high school. But even in the fall, 2 years ago, I played there at third base, and I played some first base as well. So, I have a little bit of track record there. So it's a bit of adjustment, but I'm closer to the ball now, and I'm working hard.
So, again, guys adjusting to new positions they haven't really typically played. But offensively, it's going, and defensively, it hasn't hurt you to the extent where, oh no, we've lost a game, or we had a play not made or an error or something by a guy who's not used to being in a certain spot, and now the floodgates have broken loose, and the other team has scored 10 runs. None of that stuff has happened, and this has really helped the offense. And that's why Mark Kingston did it, obviously. Offensively, there's been some inconsistencies this year, especially with runners on base and runners in scoring position. And that kind of stuff does go in waves, peaks, valleys. But you spent a lot of the year in a valley when it came to producing with runners in scoring position or runners on base. So, obviously, you're scoring a ton of runs. And even if you are leaving some runners on base in certain situations, you got so many base runners, and you are bringing in a lot of them, the left on base numbers aren't as big of a deal, if that makes any sense. And with Petrie, sophomore slump, no, not really. His OPS is over 1,100, if my math is correct off the top of my head. Petrie was 16 homers. He's had just a fine season, batting average over 300, has hit really well. Kennedy Jones, who was, Derek and Stewart's player of the game last night. Kennedy Jones has been rolling all year, leaving the team in hitting, slugging over 500, on base percentage in the mid 400s. So you've had guys who have consistently, for the most part, had really good seasons. Throw Cole Messina in there as well, hitting close to 300, slugging over 600 on bases, almost 440. So the lineup has been top heavy, but you want more consistency through the lineup. And now, it's a lineup that, and I think Petrie said it's a lineup without any weak spots. Every guy in the lineup can do some damage in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, Brindling top of the order, drawing a walk, maybe creating some havoc on the bases eventually, just getting on base, setting the table. Blake Jackson, obviously, with the 2 huge home runs in the one game over the weekend against Kentucky. Dylan Brewer was smoking hot earlier in the year. But then he cooled off, and now we see the outfield configuration has changed. But Talmadge LeCroy, even though he's not as good offensively as he was last year, still, LeCroy can be productive at the plate. So you have all these different pieces you're moving to get consistent on offense with a consistent lineup. And we were talking about this during the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Wes and Chris. It's not the end-all, be-all. But a lot of times you get comfortable when you know your role. You know where you're at and what you're doing. And yes, this might be temporary for right now, but it feels like this is where you're going. LeCroy, go play short. Costas, go play third. Petrie, you're playing first. Because if it ain't broke, don't go to fix it. And even Mark Kingston said, and we'll try to get this cut, but don't want to jinx my offense. Because that's baseball people. The most superstitious folks in the world play baseball. There's no doubt about it. So Mark Kingston's like, I don't want to say anything to jinx it. Because that's, again, the way baseball people think. That's why guys jump over lines like baselines or have certain routines all the time, because if he didn't do it, then things aren't going to work out for him. I'm just not a superstition guy. I'm not. I'm not a, ooh, you jinxed it guy. I'm not like, Robert De Niro in Silver Linings Playbook. Everybody sit in the same place you sat last week because the Eagles won. You got to hold the remote. You held the remote. You can't go to the bathroom until the third quarter. I'm just not that guy, but baseball people are massively superstitious. But going back to the original premise, right now your offense is cooking. Just keep going with you keep going on the good vibe until the good vibe runs out. And when Will Tippett comes back, not to say Will's not going to get any opportunities, right? It might be, right away if this offense is still, rolling. Will might be a late inning defensive replacement or a pinch runner or a pinch hitter or something of that ilk. But if the offense starts to, again, run dry and you want to put Tippett back in at short and configure yourself back to where he used to be, you have that option, if that makes sense. All right, so we have, feels like we wrapped up the transfer portal for the 23-24 offseason in college football. Let's take a look back at what South Carolina's done and maybe the favorite moves through the portal on both sides of the ball. We'll get to that next. Halftime show, Terry Ford hanging out. Ed Bird's here. Corey's here. Austin's here. Jeannie was here. I mean, we're going to see how many people we can fill. Guinness Book, and again, if you're young, you have no idea what the hell Guinness Book is. But if you're old, you're an old head, this is Guinness Book of World Records. I think we need to, Ed Bird, see what the Guinness Book of World Records is. How many people can you stuff in a producer studio? And we might go for the record today. And by the way, the more people you put in there, the hotter it gets. Miserably hot. All right, we'll come back, talk transfer portal, Gamecock football next on the halftime show. Terry Ford hanging in here till 3 on the game. What we're talking about in the halftime show, we've been talking about Carolina baseball. Win last night over East Tennessee State. 15-2 thumping of the Bucks. Now off to Columbia, Missouri for a weekend series against Tigers, a Tiger team that has scuffled and struggled a good amount this year. So we'll get more into that, obviously. Right now we'll focus on the transfer portal. It's closed. And now we take a step back. A lot of transfers for South Carolina. A lot of depth built up at wide receiver, defensive line, some offensive linemen coming in as well, linebackers. The team is deeper, and they have guys who have been proven to be producers at other schools. Doesn't mean they're going to be here, but you look at it and go, okay, that guy's done that, and he did it for a period of time there, so you feel better about what you might get. And a lot of bodies. Demetrius Knight was on earlier on the Garnet Trust Hour. We're going to recycle some of that for you coming up on the show as well. Demetrius Knight, very interesting dude. I mean, dunked a basketball in a high school game, bent a rim. Demetrius said the principal has it in his corner office. It's signed. Also played quarterback in high school. Productive linebacker at Charlotte. Had a pick six last year. So he brings athleticism and quickness and playmaking ability. And I feel like the linebacker room, we talked about this, Wes, Chris and I, the linebacker room is just so much more deeper. Yes, you have the guys that were here in Debo and Willis and Bam Martin-Scott. Mo Caba's coming back from injury. Hopefully he can contribute. But then you've added a couple of freshmen in JR and Wendell, Johnson and Gregory. You know, I get JR, it's cool, but man, I liked Fred. So old school. It was cool to see a guy in 2024 with the name Fred. But J.R. Johnson, Wendell Gregory, the freshman coming in. Then you have the transfer portal with Bengali Kamara and also Demetrius Knight. You're just deeper and you're more athletic. And we talk about that's going to help in the run game, obviously. But also in times when linebackers are put on an island in pass coverage, you have guys that are a little bit more athletic and more quick twitchy who might be able to do a better job holding their own in coverage. We don't talk enough about linebacking, especially against the run, because against the run, we're always focused on the defensive linemen, but the linebackers are very important too. Gap responsibility, coming up and filling gaps and filling them like within a couple yards of the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, or, you know, making those havoc plays. That's what you need from your linebackers. You want your linebackers to be playmakers. The tackle stat is a very overrated stat. It's more, where do you tackle people? If you tackle a dude at the line of scrimmage, great. You tackle a dude 8 yards down the field, not so great. So it's not just how many tackles you have, it's where you tackle people, or how much effect you have on the game in the spot on the field you're making a tackle. That's the stuff that's important. So hopefully the linebacking crew this year will make more impactful tackles. It'll make a difference. All of a sudden, it's 2nd and 11 instead of 2nd and 4, if that makes any sense. Now, if we look at, for me, I mean, I love Kyle Kennard coming in from Georgia Tech. I think, you know, South Carolina needs someone off the edge that can bring consistent heat, who's got a track record of bringing heat. And that's Kennard. I mean, I also like Knight a lot. But to me, Kennard is such a key because you think you know what you're getting there. And that's a guy that can put pressure on quarterbacks consistently. Now, again, you have Dylan Stewart coming as a freshman, but we still don't know. I mean, we saw him in the spring game, and hey, you walked away from that going, oh, my God, he could win the Heisman, and he's an edge rusher. He's phenomenal. But that's a spring game, and Stewart's a freshman, and you don't want to go overboard gaga. But you know Kyle Kennard brings productivity, and he has a track record of it. So Kennard might be my favorite transfer portal guy coming in on defense. A lot of people like Goodwine. Monkel Goodwine, the transfer in from Alabama. We saw him make a bunch of plays in the spring game, and there's been some good talk of Goodwine in practice. We'll see. But I guess my guy, I think Kennard fills a huge need, and it's a gigantically important need in today's football. Knock the quarterback down. Inflict pain. Offensively, if Rocket Sanders is healthy and the offensive line can just hold their own, that's going to help Lenore Sellers a ton. if you can run the ball and have a dude that can do what we've seen Rocket Sanders do, right? That will be huge. Because then you can be really balanced on offense. And you're not asking Lenore Sellers to wing the rock around 40 times a game because you can't move the ball on the ground. And this is the way you basically kick your offense. If you're balanced, that's going to help your young quarterback. So I think Rocket Sanders is the one on the offensive side of the ball. Look, you got a bunch of wide receivers, and you added 2 more, obviously, with Campbell and Jacobs to an already big, full wide receiver room. Hopefully you can shake that room out and get 3 or 4 guys that can really be productive for you. But I just think Rocket Sanders, when we look at the transfer portal additions, that guy is going to make the biggest difference because he's going to set up a lot of stuff for this offense. And all of the stuff we hear is Sanders is going to be healthy. He's going to be ready to rock and roll. So, to me, I go Rocket Sanders on the offensive side of the ball, and for me, Kyle Kennard on the defensive side of the ball. There's a ton of transfers, so pick whichever one would make the most sense for you as the most important ones moving into 2024. All right, so jump and grab a call real quick, 803-404-6100. Our buddy, let's see what we got here. We got Sterling. Sterling, thanks for holding on. You're on the halftime show in the game. What's up, my friend?
Hey, Terry, how's it going?
Going great, man. You good?
Yeah, going good. I just wanted to comment on something you were speaking about in terms of the Lenore. I think Lenore Sellers is going to help the running game as much as anything. If you look at the success of Carolina in the years past when it's been there and the running game, it's been the most successful when you've had a quarterback that you had to honor running if you tried to load up everything to stop that. Connor Shaw, as good as he was getting players, there was a game in the Clemson game, I think Venable's first year or second year as coordinator, where every time he did something to try to take away the middle of the pass happened, Connor Shaw would just say, if I didn't have anything going, I'm going to get 10 to 12 yards or 14 yards and get down. And in that game, he walked us up and down the field. And so then when they had to honor that, it just freed up Ellington and those guys for passes across the seams in the middle. And I think Sellers is going to be an excellent passer. But I think the biggest thing that's going to help with our running game for Rocket Sanders and all that is the fact that Sellers is a guy that if a guy comes flying in trying to get him and you miss, that's 20, 30 yards down the field, or as we saw in some of the games this year. If he gets behind you, you're a problem.
I get you, Sterling. I appreciate it, man. No, you're right. I was just kind of looking at the transfer portal guys coming in. But, yeah, Lenore Sellers' legs are going to be a huge advantage of this offense. And no offense, Spencer Rattler, different kind of player. But you make the perfect point. You have to account for Sellers as a runner. And if you look at that in football, in college, pro, whatever, if you got to account for the quarterback as a runner, it changes the dynamic of the defense. I mean, look, Lamar Jackson hasn't gotten to a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, and who knows if they ever will. It's more than just Lamar. But with Lamar Jackson's ability, not just to take off, but to make you pay down the field, like big plays, like Lamar in a playoff win a few years ago against the Titans, took off and ran for a touchdown, a huge explosive play in that game. You have a guy who not only can escape, but then can, if he decides to turn it upfield, if nobody's open, he can do damage. And like you said, Sterling, 20, 30 yards down the field. One guy misses, it's a huge play. And it also opens up the passing game. And the one thing we saw from the spring game with Lenoris Sellers that I liked when we were doing the game was Lenoris would escape from the pocket, and he's looking upfield to make a throw. So you got to pick your poison as a defender, right? If you're out there at linebacker, or if you're a safety or whatever defender is in that area, when Sellers escapes, you got to make a choice. You coming up? Because if not, he might pick up 10 or 12. But if you do come up, he might, with his head up behind the line of scrimmage, make a play in the passing game to hit you 15, 18, 20 yards down the field. So again, you got to, the goal of the offense is to make the defense make bad decisions that they'll regret. That's a tough decision right there, man. Am I going to come up and stop him in the run game because he can run, But if I do come up, am I exposing myself in the back end of the defense for a big play in the passing game? Because if Linares is looking up while he's escaping and someone's open, there's a good chance he can make a throw down the field to hurt you. But if you stay back, he could cut it upfield and pick up a bunch of yards as well. So absolutely. Those legs will make a difference in this offense. I was really just talking about the transfer portal guys and how Rocket Sanders can take some pressure off of Linares. Because the last thing you want to do, here's a guy that's, he started 0 college football games. It would be nice to put enough offensive weaponry around him and have a solid offensive line in front of him to where Linares Sellers doesn't have to go do too much. He can just settle in, get comfortable, and develop into the starting quarterback we all think he can be. All right, appreciate the call, though. All right, 803-404-6100. We'll get back in here as we continue on. We've been talking a ton about Carolina football. Very interesting little Twitter beef going on in the world of college football that involves family and coaches and all sorts of stuff. We're going to talk about that and get the reaction, because I think it's very interesting. Scott Van Pelt dropped last night on ESPN on his Sports Center show. We'll talk a little Dion and Shador, the Sanders family, and what's been happening in the last 24, 36 hours. That's next. Halftime show. Terry Ford, we're rolling this sucker along with Ed Bird till 3 on the game. All right, we cooked the halftime show sponsored by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina here on the game. Terry Ford, Ed Bird's here hanging around, just steering the ship for us. Deion Sanders and his son, Shador, kind of in the news in the last 24 hours in our social media world. It all started, The Athletic, and I haven't read the whole piece, but it's an interesting post in The Athletic by Max Olson. And the headline is, What Happened to Deion Sanders' Colorado Castoffs? Revisiting a record-setting exodus. And yeah, I mean, Deion ran off a ton of guys from that Colorado team. And again, it was a terrible team. They were awful. So yeah, you want to, bring in better talent, bring in more talent. But it was crazy how many guys ran off the Colorado team or were brought in. I mean, the transfer portal numbers, your head will explode. So The Athletic does this article, and in the story, Xavier Smith, who played at Colorado, said in the story that Deion Sanders never tried to get to know me. He was destroying guys' confidence and belief in themselves. And again, that is Xavier Smith's take. Now, Shador Sanders popped on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, says he didn't remember who Smith was. Basically, is like, bro had to be mid at best, insinuating that Smith was only an average player. Now, Smith went on to play at FCS Austin Peay, where he was an All-American at FCS level. Now he's moved on to UTEP with their head coach from Austin Peay, Scotty Walden. And this thing just kept going. Then Colorado receiver Caleb Mathis posted a video of himself beating Smith in practice. Then Smith's teammate, Jaheim Ward, jumped in, saying Mathis only had 38 receiving yards all year. It became like a huge Twitter beef. Then Deion jumped in and took a shot at the anonymous FCS player. He said basically, took a shot at the player and then talked about his son and took a shot back at a guy. He said, my son will be a top 5 pick. Where's your son going? And, again, Deion taking shots at, ex-player and ex-player. And then I'll get to what I think in a minute. Here's Scott Van Pelt real quick. Ed Bird will get to Scott Van Pelt on Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center show last night. It's a couple minutes of Van Pelt's thoughts on all of this, and then we'll piggyback and give our thoughts. Hit it there, Ed Bird.
And it's just the tone of the comments in response that feels so small, the mean-spiritedness of it all. There are plenty of trolls on the internet. They tend to be anonymous, hiding behind fake names to rip those who are almost certainly more accomplished in whatever it is they do. Deion Sanders, though, he's the very public face of the Colorado program. He let everyone on Twitter know Wednesday he had the time. Some of it was to defend his son, Shador, who Dad tweeted is going to be a top 5 pick in response to a tweet critical of his son. Deion asked where the commenter's son was going to get drafted. Shador posted on Tuesday he didn't remember a player named Xavier Smith who had departed the Buffs program and been critical of how it was handled. Quote, bro had to be very mid at best. Well, in the end, what was Colorado last year? They owned the early part of September. Game Day and Fox's Big Noon Show were both in Boulder for the Buffaloes game against Colorado State. They won it to go 3-0. The Buffs were no longer just coming. They said, we're here. They went 1-8 from there. Still, Colorado was a huge story, great for the sport. They drew massive television ratings and were, at minimum, a whole lot more interesting and competitive than they had been. But if you mention that record or today's tweets, you know what that makes you? A hater. Only, not really. With regard to last year's record, it's not hating, it's counting, isn't it? And reasonable criticism is fair game, which comes with the gig. The term haters gets used like a bulletproof vest. It's Kevlar to deflect the source of any criticism, no matter how fair it might be. Undoubtedly, plenty of what is directed at Sanders is not. But everyone's just a hater? I'm not at all. And as a guy who used to have to endure segments on radio where we recounted my Twitter beefs, I understand how difficult it is to do what people suggest those in the public eye should do. Just ignore the noise. Sometimes it's hard, though, to hold your tongue. However, as the leader of a program looking to ascend, I don't believe that any of this serves to elevate.
I mean, Van Pelt's right with the idea that, look, Deion, you're not Deion Sanders' all-world iconic Hall of Fame corner anymore. You're not Deion Sanders talking head on the NFL Network anymore. You're Deion Sanders' head coach. You know, Coach Prime. You're the head coach now. You're the leader. You set examples. And if this is the example you want to set, fine. If you want your program to be this, where everybody's spending their time taking shots at others on Twitter or defending themselves or their family on Twitter, whatever the case, if that's what you want, cool, dude. Just you better stack some W's. I think the team was better in year one with Deion than they were the year before when they were awful. When I think we could have got 11 guys here at work to go beat Colorado. They were better. But, dude, you still went 4-8, and you got beat 8 of your last 9. How about get the hell off Twitter and work on your football team? How about that, man? Because, really, at the end of the day, you're going to be judged on W's, not on Twitter followers, on shares, on likes, on reposts. You know, okay, some guy said something about your son, a high-profile quarterback. Who cares? Be bigger, be better, all of you. Worry about winning games, getting better in year 2, and not worry about this nonsense. Because all this is nonsense. It's not helping you be better as a program. Again, you're Coach Prime now. Act like Coach Prime. Very simple. All right, we'll come back in here. Football in the 1 o'clock hour. We got some Demetrius Knight to play for you next. Halftime show. Terry Ford, glad you're going to be hanging as we cook through Thursday. Ed Bird's here, making sure we stay on the air. We'll be rolling up until 3 o'clock in the postgame show with Jay and Elijah here on the game. Hey, thanks for hanging, whether you're in Columbia at 107.5 The Game, in Florence 100.5 The Game, or Myrtle Beach 100.3 The Game. We do football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. And first couple segments, we want to rewind in case you missed it. Demetrius Knight, new Carolina linebacker, was on the Garnet Trust Hour with Wes and Chris and Elijah earlier this morning. And we're thinking about hiring him. Dude was good. Really good for that hour. And, all right, let's start off by giving you a little Demetrius Knight. Let's go here, Ed Bird. Demetrius Knight, what convinced him on his visit that the South Carolina Gamecocks were the place where he wanted to play college football?
Everything that you ask for. This is everything you look for when you come on a visit. Do they have everything that will support you as an athlete to help you reach that next goal? Because in the NFL, and I try to think about where I'm going before I even get there. You know, I try to train like a pro each and every day. And if I can't rehab like a pro to get my body ready for the next game, because it's the SEC, you have to be ready week in, week out. And if you're not, you'll be eaten alive. It's a dog-eat-dog world in the SEC, man, because a lot of people come to watch, and this is the football people look forward to on Saturdays. And if you're not at your best, it can be a long Saturday afternoon for you or a long Saturday night for you, depending on when you play. And I'm not gonna let myself or my teammates be able to fall under that spectrum of being, they weren't ready. So having everything we have here, that was also another selling point.
Along those same lines, man, what do you have kind of a goal playing weight that you try to and I know weight can kind of fluctuate a little bit depending on water weight and time of day, all these different things, but what's kind of your goal, or are you sort of already at that aiming point?
I'm pretty much already at that aiming point just from these past winter workouts and going through the spring and maintaining the same weight. At 245, I feel good there. I don't look it because, you know, my teammates will walk up to me and be like, how are you 245? You don't look 245. And I'm like, I know, I appreciate it. But, you know, that's what I love to play at. You know, I take on blocks better at that comfortable size because, you know, it's a little more muscle to that. So it helps me, and then I'm still able to keep my speed. So it helps me a lot.
I thought it was interesting, a bunch of stuff he said there. First of all, about why pick South Carolina. And he's like, they're getting me prepared to play not only on Saturday in the SEC, but for the next level of my journey, which is to hopefully play in the NFL. So that's very interesting. A lot of guys don't think that far in advance in that way. It's like, I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to ball out, I'm going to show the NFL scouts what I can do, and then I'll get drafted and go to the NFL. And I want to win on Saturday, because nobody goes like this. Yeah, I want to get the NFL, but I also want to go 1-11. Nobody thinks that way. They want to win. But when you're thinking that other level of preparing myself, not just for now, but the little small things that I need to do to be a pro. You heard Demetrius Knight talk about that, and, you know, we were yapping with Wes and Chris earlier this morning on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, and they talked about, you know, Knight, he's married, he has a kid, he has another one on the way. And that's kind of the way this has evolved, especially because of that COVID year. I mean, you got like adult grown men playing college sports. And Demetrius Knight's an example of that. You know, he's grounded, he's mature. You know, when you think college football player, you think, you know, you're playing college football, you're running around, at 5 Points or the Vista or wherever, you're having a great time, you're doing keg stands. Here's a guy going home to his wife and kids playing college football. And that's really what the COVID year has done. Now, eventually, that burns away, and things will kind of get back to normal when it comes to your eligibility. And plus, remember, transfer portal's a wild, wild west now. Eligibility, you don't lose a year, don't have to sit out a year. You can just go transfer. But right now, you do have 23, 24, 25-year-olds playing college football, or more mature players at even 22. It's a different world, and Knight brings a different mindset. He's like, yeah, I'm here to play in the SEC and win games. I'm also here to prepare for the NFL because that's my goal. And you talk about playing at 245. He was here hanging out with us. We were just kind of, shooting the crap with him before he left. And Knight does not look 245. When I found out he was rolling at 245, I'm like, hey, that guy don't look 245. Because some guys carry it different. And it's always a compliment when you go, wow, you don't look like you're carrying that kind of weight. And Knight does not look it. An athletic linebacker, and we talked about what he can possibly do for this team in the linebacker room. I think the entire linebacker position is there's more depth, more athleticism, more, I guess you have more confidence in production from multiple guys. So that's Demetrius Knight talking about why he came to South Carolina and the playing weight. All right, the second one we're going to take here, Ed Bird, from Demetrius Knight, is playing for Clayton White. Let's get the Demetrius Knight playing for Clayton White cut there, Ed.
It's a blessing to play for Coach White. He's, you have those coaches that keep their game face on, even when you come on recruiting visits and they try to play the hard ball, hard guy, hard coach type of stuff. But Coach White is, like you said, down to earth. When you're off the field, he can talk to you about off the field stuff. So he's not always in coach mode. When you're in the meeting room, he'll throw jokes in there, and the room is, the room is intense where everyone's on edge because everybody's fighting for a job. He makes everyone feel together and feel like one, because we're going to need each other when we go into the season. So it's great playing for him. He's humbled, God-fearing man, funny guy, definitely always going to crack jokes, always have us laughing. But when it comes time to competing, he'll lock back in, especially on scrimmage days. So you get to see that side of him too, how he calls the game in real stressful game-like situations.
It's interesting when you hear about with Clayton White, because Clayton White's a great guy. We enjoy having our conversations with Clayton White. But he's also, when he gets in front of the mics and he does the press conferences, you can tell Clayton's very guarded in what he says. And Clayton's up there like, I got to be up here because I got to be up here. Nothing against you guys. But, I really don't want to be up here doing a press conference. But it's part of the gig. But when you hear about how funny he is and, stuff he does, and then you see, like, the press conferences, you're like, come on, Clayton, show some of that. But, look, I've always said this about press conferences. You're better off if the thing they say about you is, wow, a guy says nothing. Because in today's world, you could say the littlest thing and it goes sideways and gets crazy. And then you've got drama on your hands, distraction on your hands. You got to put up with a bunch of nonsense, whatever. It's better off to be Bill Belichick. I mean, it's bad for our business. We love people who go off the hook, off the chain, say goofy stuff, say controversial things or things we can yap about. Like Deion. Deion's great for business. We just did that little riff about Deion. It's like, Deion, get off Twitter and, go make your football team better. But Deion, for sports talk, I hope he's at Colorado for years. He's great for our business. But if I was a coach, I would be, I'd want to have a little fun, but I'd also be I would be thinking twice before I'm saying stuff in this world. So Clayton does. He gets up there and does a press conference, says what he's got to say, out. So when you hear about how much fun he has and how funny he is and all that other stuff, you go, cool. And then Clayton puts on the press conference face guy. He comes out. But it is a room where it's going to be competitive. You got Debo coming back. Willis and Bam Martin-Scott, their level of play kicked in November. You got the two freshmen, Gregory and Johnson, who have looked good so far as they're developing and growing. And then you add in Kamara and you add in Knight. There's going to be a fight for snaps. But you have good depth, and if you can rotate guys, you have a fresher crew of linebackers in the fourth quarter of important games. And that's always a good thing. We'll get one more for Demetrius Knight in this right here. And continuing the conversation about playing for Clayton White, here's Demetrius Knight, Ed Bird, talking about playing in Clayton White's scheme of defense.
The scheme so far has been great. There's, as Demo will put it, there is a bunch of animals on the D line. There's a bunch of animals on the defense as a whole. So playing behind a great D line, playing with great linebackers, playing with great DBs, it's been nothing but competitive, but it's fun. And when you're out there hunting as one, there's no better rush than that. So it's been it's been lights out. I can't wait to see what we do, where we go with this defense, but I know that we will go out there with the object of hunting.
I mean, that's just the scheme is 4-2-5, 3-3-5, whichever way they're going. But here's Knight talking about the linebacker room and how competitive it is. But you look, it's got to be fun too. I mean, this day and age, the days of just trudging through misery in practice. You hear these stories from, Preston talking about what it was like with Lou, with Coach Holtz. Wasn't a lot of yucking it up. And today, you mix it up more. It's more, you got to have a little fun with it to go with the work and the competitiveness and the I mean, you still have but you also want it to have times of fun. That's what you heard him talk about with Clayton. Clayton's making it fun, good sense of humor, joking around, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. And you learn how to balance that. And, you hear Knight saying, look, we got a lot of competition in this room. Everybody's looking to make plays, but we're also looking to be starters or get a lot of reps and snaps. So pretty interesting. We'll get some more Demetrius Knight in the next segment talking about what goes on with Luke Day, the strength and conditioning coach, and also Knight talking about the linebacker room. So we have that coming up. Halftime show, football here in the 1 o'clock hour. And do not forget baseball. Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Missouri. We get everything going Friday, 6:45 pre, Saturday, 3:45 pregame. Coverage kicks Sunday at 1:45. So you're home of the Gamecocks here in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. You'll be hearing Gamecock baseball all weekend long. Come back, more Demetrius Knight on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird's here on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging as we're doing football. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors in the 1 o'clock hour. We've been checking into some cuts from Demetrius Knight. He was on Garner Trust Hour with Wes and Chris and Elijah earlier this morning. And we want to grab a couple more little slices of audio from Knight. We heard him talk about playing for Clayton White, also what convinced him to come to South Carolina. And Demetrius Knight did a lot of talking about the linebacker room and the depth in the linebacker room and the philosophy of the linebacker room. Let's get a little more in depth with Demetrius Knight talking about this crew of linebackers at South Carolina.
With that room, it's a room of competitors, man. It's a room of guys who are hungry, and that's a room that you want to get better in. It's not a room where you get discouraged, like, oh man, this guy's getting more reps, or this guy's doing that. Everybody wants you to get better. Everybody's going to help you study. Everybody's going to help you learn what to do here. Everybody's going to talk about ball, but then off the field, you know, in the dining area, everybody's going to joke around, mess with each other, and that's how you build a family. That's how you build a camaraderie, and that's how you can trust the guy to your right, to your left, or trust the guys who are on the field to make that play when it's time to win the game.
You know what's interesting about, I was thinking about listening to Demetrius Knight talk. You know, think about it for a minute. And this adds a new dynamic to the world of college athletics, football, basketball, whatever. So it's one thing, like if you're a veteran on let's do state college football team, you're a veteran. Freshman comes in, unless he is a highly skilled freshman, you know you're probably going to keep your gig, right? You are. Now it's a different animal with this transfer portal. You bring a guy like Demetrius Knight. He's got skins in the game. You know, what he did at Charlotte last year, a linebacker leading the team in interceptions, had a pick six. He's a guy with a resume of productivity. Now he's coming into your room and he's trying to take your job. That is more like a pro-level situation than just the typical collegiate-level situation that we used to see before the transfer portal became what it is, you know, you were dealing with freshmen, maybe some JUCO guys coming in, but now there are players rolling onto these rosters that have a record of productivity to a certain level and have been brought in to possibly take your job. It just changed the dynamic, but then like Demetrius Knight's talking about, everybody, then you got to balance it with this. We want the team to be better. You know, we want to be a cohesive unit. We want to be positive. We want to be there for each other. We want to be the brotherhood and all the other things we talk about. But also, look, you're human. Guy's going to take my snaps. I got to fight that off. Does it make everybody better? Sure, but it's just it's a very interesting change in philosophy that has added with the transfer portal and more veteran talent just moving around the country. But interesting. All right, final cut from Demetrius Knight. Here's Knight discussing. Look, Luke Day has got some. We've heard about the philosophies and the ideas that Luke Day uses in strength and conditioning. Some of them are pretty wild. Well, here's Demetrius Knight talking about working with Luke Day.
I believe that's probably the first time I've ever had to come back home and tell my wife, I don't know what we're doing the next day. Usually I could say, oh, it's probably legs this day, chest this day. This is probably the first time where I've been like, I have no clue what we're doing, but I have to stretch. I have to. She'll get mad at me because I'm on the ground before bed trying to stretch every muscle I have because I have no idea what's going to be worked out the next day. And she's like, What are you doing? I'm like, you don't know. You just don't know. I have to wake up early. I have to bring the energy or it's gonna get me. But you know, it's different, but it's what we need. He has helped me to work on muscles I didn't know I had this entire time in college. So although it's hurt, it's a good hurt, and I appreciate it. I believe it'll pay off this season.
I love that. He's made me work on muscles I never knew I had. It's true. I mean, if you've ever done that, like let's say you work out or you're trying some new workout or trying something different, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I never knew that part of my body would hurt. I never knew I had that part of my body. This is crazy. But Luke Day does a lot of different stuff. I love the line, I really don't know what we're going to do the next day. And Demetrius Knight's wife's like, so what's up? I don't know. I'll find out when I get there. I just got to stretch and get ready because I don't know what we're going to be doing. And, we've heard a lot of stuff like that with Luke Day. Like, for example, have you ever been a guy and taken yoga? Like maybe you've never done in your life and you go take a yoga class? And maybe you did it and you loved it and you kept doing it. But the first time you go and do it, and if you do it right, things hurt on you knew you never had. Like, what is that and why does it hurt? I never knew I had that part of my body and it's in pain. Or like, muscles you have that never hurt like they do after you do yoga. I did it one time with my girlfriend. I was like in a body cast for 3 days. I'm like, what was this? What was this devil thing? I've never taken one since, but it's good. But really, it was. Yoga's a good thing. I just should take it. I did one time, and it was like, oh wow. So that's probably what, in the example of Luke Day working all these different muscle groups and different exercises and stuff that you typically don't do. Or I'll give you another one. You help a buddy move. So, yeah, man, I'll come help you move. Remember the old days, pizza and beer. Yeah, man, I'll show up. I'll help you move. Just give me pizza and beer. Even though the more beer you drank, the tougher it was to move the guy's stuff. But when you help someone move and you're doing with they call it like just like regular daily strength that you're using. Just the movement of muscles on a daily basis and not in the gym like pumping iron. How much pain are you in the next day? It's like, well, I helped my buddy move. Yeah. I'm sore in places I never knew I had. Because it's functional is one thing. Functional strength. Using functional strength. And you never do that all the time. It's like you help a dude move, you haven't lifted boxes in 3 years when you moved. And all of a sudden you're in massive pain. Well, that's the kind of thing when you're using muscles or body parts you typically don't use to put stress on, then all of a sudden you're like, wow. And that's what Demetrius Knight, I guess, is talking about with Luke Day. I'm not saying he's saying, hey, let's go help somebody move for pizza and beer, but we're going to do functional strength training because that's a thing too today, functional strength training. So interesting stuff from Demetrius Knight. And again, the linebacker room, just to me, is so much better than it was last year. And that's not dogging the guys that were in there last year. It's just you've added a couple of freshmen who came in as 4 stars and look like they got a ton of potential as they develop. You're bringing a couple of guys from the transfer portal in Knight and Kamara who have been successful with other programs and productive. And you added to Debo and Willis and Martin Scott. And if Mo Kaba can come back from injury, you throw Kaba in the mix as well. Now you really have something in your linebacker room. Depth that you haven't had in the last few years. That's a good thing. All right, we talked about baseball a minute ago this weekend here on the game. Before these games start, it might be a good idea. 1,100 reasons to go to 1075thegame.com and register for the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. We are up now to $1,100 in the pot. We have not seen a Gamecock hit a Grand Slam all year. The way they're going on offense, it could happen at any point. So go to 1075thegame.com, look for that little media reel thing that keeps flipping, the little flippy thingy. Once it goes, Grand Slam giveaway, click on it, fill out the form, hit submit, and if a Gamecock does hit a Grand Slam, the next weekday morning at 7:30, we will draw a winner on the early game. Could be you, but you got to qualify. And how you qualify is you register. You go online to do that at 1075thegame.com. It's from Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union, our Grand Slam giveaway here on the game. We'll come back. We're talking about this new world of college football, right? Where there could be revenue sharing with college athletes, with the universities. Yes, some type of collectively bargained agreement between all these parties. So the NCAA could get out of court where they live all the time. And by the way, they stink when they're in court. One thing that also could change, some of the things about bowl games. We'll discuss that next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, our buddy Ed Burt, and Corey. Now, he's pushed Ed Burt out of the captain's chair and he's taken over. We got wrestling going on in the producer room. We'll get back here, talk some college football next. Football, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on the game. Oh, what we're talking about, football. Like we always do in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the Halftime Show. This is interesting. Now, we've talked about, yesterday, was it yesterday, day before? I've lost track. All these days run together. We were discussing the NCAA trying to settle a lawsuit that's been brought in California, House versus the NCAA, that if the lawyers for the NCAA walk into court and try to fight this lawsuit, they're going to lose. And it's going to be at least $4 billion or more having to be paid by the NCAA. The lawsuit basically is every player in collegiate athletics who played before NIL deserves to get some type of compensation because the NCAA blocked their right to earn money through the NIL space, which is, say it with me, breaking antitrust laws. So that's billions of dollars. And at the end of the day, the NCAA has been told they're going to lose because they always lose. That's who they are. The Washington Generals of the legal system. So, to avoid that, now there are conversations between the NCAA and the lawyers representing House to get this thing settled. It's still going to be, $1 billion, maybe more, maybe $2, but not $4, $5, $6, $10 billion. Because if House goes in and wins, the NCAA's done. But some people would think, it's not a bad thing, Tara. Now, if this does come to pass, which most people think that there will be a settlement, also, which goes along with that settlement, will be the structure of revenue sharing with the athletes, which means you need to, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call the players, whatever you want to call the universities, the NCAA, executives, whatever, that all get together, there's going to have to be some kind of agreement hammered out between the parties that the players will vote on and will give a big thumbs up to, and then things will move forward with rules and regulations and guardrails and all that stuff. One of the interesting battlegrounds could be bowl games. ESPN post, ESPN.com, as revenue sharing with college athletics becomes a growing possibility, some bowl leaders are already hoping for a collective bargaining agreement with the players that would help significantly lower the number of postseason player opt-outs. Because we see that today, because again, if I was a player and I knew I was going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, I ain't playing the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl or the Quick Lube Bowl or even the Rose Bowl if it's not a college football playoff game. I ain't playing. I don't want to risk my earning potential, which is in the millions, by playing in a bowl game that's not part of the college football playoff. Now, if it's a college football playoff game, I'm in. But if it's not, see ya. Have a good life. Loved it here. I'll come back, maybe earn my degree one day, come to some games. It'll be great, but I'm gone. I do not blame players for doing that because you got to look out for yourself. Because remember, everybody else is looking out for themselves. Coaches, ADs, administrators, presidents, schools, everybody's looking out for themselves. So you as a player, look out for yourself. I'm totally on board with it. I've flipped 180 over the years over this. Totally agree with opting out to protect yourself in a bowl game. It's not a college football playoff tilt. All right, so here's what the bowls are saying now. Nick Carparelli, executive director of bowl season, told ESPN at the Fiesta Bowl Spring Summit this week that his understanding from speaking with conference commissioners and the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, is that NIL collectives are destined to be brought in-house to the universities, and there have been discussions about contracts in exchange for NIL payments. So here's what Caparelli says. Quote, if you sign a contract and receive compensation, you're obligated to perform certain duties. In this case, play 12 regular season games in a bowl game or a bowl game in the playoff. That's a logical thing to expect. It's the way the rest of us working folks operate. I get that from the bowl side. You want the star players playing in the bowl game because that's a bigger pull, whether it's TV, whether it's people coming to the game. You want to watch the best of the best. Totally understand that. Now, Fiesta Bowl Executive Director and CEO Eric Moses agreed, adding that he isn't insensitive to the risks the players and agents might have to take. Quote from Moses, "Think about the industry that we're in. We put on live events, the bowl games. You come in to see the talent. If the main talent isn't there, that's not the same. You go see the Rolling Stones. What if you go see the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger's not playing? Are you really seeing the Stones? You want to see the best talent to be involved in these matchups and in these games and these events. That's what people are paying to see. So here you have two sides. You have the bowls, who I get you. You want the best players because that drives more audience. But if you're a player, you're like, whoa. You want to, in this agreement we're going to put together, you want me to play in the bowl game no matter what bowl game it is and risk injury and risk my earning potential on a professional level? We got to do some more bargaining here. Because I don't know if I'm ready to sign off on that, but if I'm going to sign off on that, what else you giving me? Because you got to give me something else if I'm going to put my professional career on the line to play in the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. So this is where all this is going to be going. It's going to be very interesting. But these are one of those battleground points, in my opinion. Because there are going to be players who would vote this down. Like, if you're not playing, if you won't have the ability to play in the college football playoff, in your mind, let's say I'm just going to pick a school. Let's say Vanderbilt. You play at Vanderbilt. Yeah, you struggle. There's a really, 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 really low, small chance that you're going to participate in the college football playoff at Vanderbilt. Why would you sign off on playing in a bowl game, especially if you are, through your career, a guy that looks like you're going to get drafted? Despite the fact that Vanderbilt's terrible, you have a shot to, let's say, be a first-round pick. Why would you want to vote for this, to play that extra game? Because, look, again, is playing in a bowl game fun? Sure it is for a lot of college athletes. You're going to play in a bowl game. In that town where the bowl game is, you're king for the week. You're going to get some cool merch, and you're going to be on TV playing in a bowl game. So there's a lot of good to it. But if you're a guy that could be drafted in the first round or the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, why would you go out there and risk injury? This is going to be a fight. This is one of your deals that when the bargaining and the negotiating happen between players and the NCAA or whatever crew is going to be negotiating with the players for this agreement, this one's going to be a fight. This one's going to be a fight. So we'll see. But the bowl people want language in whatever agreement, obviously, for players that have to play in a bowl game or a college football playoff game. Another part of this was that the bowls, which are constructed the way they are now, once you build the college football playoff, that a bowl game could go away. Quote, again, the 12-team format won't require the elimination of any bowl games currently in operation, but if the college football playoff eventually expands to 14 teams in 2026 and beyond, one bowl game might get cut. Oh, well. Are there too many bowl games? Sure there are. But you know what it does? It gives us stuff to watch during December. And you're flipping around, you're, oh, wow, the Pinstripe Bowl. Let's see what's going on there. It's not like you made the Pinstripe Bowl must-see TV. But if you're sitting there in the man cave or the couch or whatever and you start spinning the thumb on the remote and you land on the Pinstripe Bowl, I'll leave here for a few minutes and see if it's interesting. That's what we do in December, these bowl games. It gives content to TV. So even though there are too many of them, they still bring a good amount of positivity to us as a sports fan. And for these programs, they get more practice. and things of that nature that help themselves get ready for the next year. But we could be losing a bowl game down the road, possibly if the college football playoff continues to expand. All right, final segment, football in the 1 o'clock hour. Terry Ford hanging out with you. We will get a couple of comments from the Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark, about the college football playoff and the money being distributed. And we'll get some other news and notes from the world of football in our final segment. 803-404-6100 is our phone line and text line. Halftime show, football in the 1 o'clock hour. We are kicking up until 3 here on the game. We are rolling football in the halftime show. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging out as we roll till 3 here on the game. Of course, our 1 o'clock hour always sponsored by our buds at Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark just said recently he wasn't happy with the league's recently negotiated revenue distribution plan from the college football playoff. Duh. Of course not. Out of the Power 4 leagues, the Big 12, they were fourth, getting $12 million. It's $1 million less than the ACC got. Of course, Atlantic Coast Conference got 13, while the Big 10 and the SEC got 21. Why? Well, because the Big 10 and the SEC are who they are, and the ACC and the Big 12 are who they are. Very simple. It's the way this thing goes. Group of 5 looks at the Big 12, quit whining. You got more than we did. Now, Yormark also pushed for a look-in to the new TV deal, which will kick in 2026. That look-in will be in 2028 to give the commissioners an opportunity to reevaluate the economics and see if they should modify or adjust the deal. Of course, the Big 10 and SEC go, yeah, right, kick rocks. But we'll see if that look-in does happen. Look, if you're the Big 12, I'm not saying this to be mean. Who's your big-time blue blood program in football? Exactly. You don't have one now. Your 2 took off to the SEC. Right now, you've got none. You got good programs. Kansas State, Kansas, good programs. Oklahoma State's been a good program under Mike Gundy for, it feels like, forever. But none of them are iconic blue blood programs. Not at this point. Could they one day happen and they could become one? Sure. But right now, there's no one in the Big 12 that's a blue blood program that pushes the needle in any way, shape, or form. You just don't have it. I mean, the ACC, I mean, look, Clemson the last couple years hasn't been the Clemson that everybody got used to, which is perennial trips to the college football playoff. And Clemson slipped under the 10-win total for the first time, and it feels like forever last year. But you don't have a Clemson in the Big 12. You don't have a Florida State in the Big 12. You just don't. So the ACC's kind of got it up on you in that regard. Because, yeah, I mean, Clemson and Florida State right now, they're not, Ohio State. No. They're not, they don't have that 40, 50, 60 years of, resume of being a high-level program for the most part, like in Oklahoma, Alabama. Just don't. Florida State feels like after the last 2 years, they're back? Little question mark? So the Big 12 really doesn't have that. And maybe if you're Brent Yormark, you want that look in a few years so you can say, hey, now we have this and this and this, and we push the needle more, and we need more dough. I get it. But where are you going to push the needle more? You're hoping that one of your programs in the Big 12 grows into a blue blood? Or we've talked about this before. Florida State and Clemson, if they do find a way to get out of the ACC, everybody automatically thinks the SEC is going to snatch them, or the Big 10. In the words of my buddy Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. The SEC doesn't have to expand anywhere, and they're already in the state of South Carolina and the state of Florida. Clemson and Florida State don't fit the Big 10 profile of AAU research schools. So maybe the Big 12's a spot. You're not stuck in the grant of rights hell like you are in the ACC, and you'd be the 2 big-time programs in the Big 12, which you could build upon to become a lot quicker to get in the blue blood line if your play on the field continues or gets back to a high level. You wouldn't be, like in the SEC, yeah, you're getting more dough, but you're way behind the pecking order in some other quote-unquote blue bloods. In the Big 10, there's a ton of tradition there that you don't have. So maybe you go in, you buy low, so to speak, in the Big 12, and then you grow yourself into the signature programs in the conference. Just saying. But Brett Yormark, hopefully to reopen a look at the college football playoff contract in a few years because he's hoping the Big 12 will be in a better spot. I saw this, and this is a very interesting little antidote about the NFL. Now, the NFL is a bunch of bazillionaire owners. I mean, these dudes, they print their own money in their basement, right? Robert Kraft, there's dollar bills in New England with Kraft's face on them. Well, what we're seeing more and more around the country now, because the NFL owners are so rich and the NFL is such a cash cow, a lot of local cities don't want to use public money to help out these owners to build stadiums. Because they're like, wait a minute, man, you're a bazillionaire. Build your own stadium. Refurbish and renovate your own stadium. Why are we taking public money from taxpayers who you make more money than they do in one day than they do in a year? Right now, places like Chicago, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Cleveland, possibly Jacksonville, facing resistance in the local markets for taxpayer/public money. I totally agree. I mean, these guys, it's like for an example, these owners own a business entity in a city. They're going to the city to give them money to renovate their business or the place they do their business. I think it's Mike Florio in this post. Do what a lot of business owners do. Go get a loan or add more partners so you can infuse yourself with cash to go build a new stadium or renovate your current stadium or your current business. Do what other business owners do and don't go with your hand out mooching off of the public and taxpayers, especially when you are someone who has billionaire in your name. Totally down with that. Absolutely. I've always been like public money. It's embarrassing that these people hold these cities hostage, and then if you don't give them the money, they'll start talking about moving their team. It's a very interesting post by Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. I will get back in here. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Some interesting things trending, like what the Sixers are doing to keep Knicks fans out of their arena in Philly for the playoffs. We'll get to that next, and some more Gamecock stuff with South Carolina baseball. That's next. Halftime show, Terry Ford hanging here up until 3. And I got Corey taking over, punching the buttons, making sure that we, and he's stay near the dump button, Corey, because every now and then it's like Tourette's, man. I lose my mind. So be ready. We're here till 3 right now. What's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions, a partner with the Garnet Trust. Again, you buy Gamecock gear at Gamecock Traditions. A portion of that goes toward the NIL with the Garnet Trust. All right, South Carolina baseball, a nice 15-2 win in the midweek last night over East Tennessee State. It couldn't have been better. Your pitching staff shuts the door after the second inning, where East Tennessee State only gets 1 hit. And offensively, you go nuts and score 15, and you run rule the Bucks in the midweek. After the game, we've heard some Mark Kingston. We'll circle back to Kingston here in just a little bit. But right now, focusing on the players, Gavin Casas, Ethan Petrie spoke after the game. Let's go to cut 16, Corey. Ethan Petrie talking about South Carolina right now, 18-2 against Quad 2, Quad 3, and Quad 4 teams. I believe that's a number that I heard last night in the presser. Here's Ethan Petrie talking about winning games you're supposed to win. Hit it.
I just think, we treat every game the same. I know we play big opponents every other game, but, we play in the SEC, so we got to treat everybody like, they're Quad 1 opponents, and same with the midweeks. You got to go out there with the same fire as you would. I know it is tough, not as big of a crowd, but you got to go out there, and I don't know what Quad 1 and, Quad 4 means, but I just feel like, we got to stick to the, being the same composure for a Quad 1 win and a Quad 4 win.
I mean, that's the one thing about this team is they've won the games they're supposed to win. Yes, there for a bit they lost 4 out of 6 series in the SEC, but of course that's all to ranked teams at the time. So it's been a tough schedule. It's top 5 toughest schedule in the country. But they have won the games they're supposed to win. Yeah, the Georgia Southern midweek loss was their only midweek defeat. And yeah, that one wasn't the prettiest in the world. It was 8-0, but that's the only midweek loss all year. And again, when you're 18-2 against Quad 2, Quad 3, Quad 4, you're handling your business. And right now being, 12-12 against Quad 1 teams at this point. So you're hoping they're now over the hump. Mark Kingston been talking about that the last week or two about, we're right there, we just have to get over the hump. Hopefully now, with winning 2 out of 3 over Kentucky, getting a nice midweek win over East Tennessee State, hopefully handling your business at Missouri this weekend will put you in a nice spot. Also, as we continue to hear from some players after last night's win, Gavin Casas also spoke with the media afterwards, and Casas was talking about playing at Missouri.
So I have not played over there. I mean, I've heard some things about it. I'm not going to say those things. We're going to keep it positive. But no, that's a scrappy team, and if you don't go in there, you don't play well, they can take 3 from you quick. Like that happened to Florida, and nobody's safe in this league. You got to go out there, you got to play your best baseball every single day, and you got to go out there and you compete. If you don't compete, you don't have much of a chance. So this weekend's a good weekend for us, but we gotta perform.
And yes, Missouri has scuffled and struggled, and I think they've lost 7 of their last 9 SEC games since that sweep of Florida. But again, with your Mark Kingston, that's what you got in the back pocket for ammo. Hey, guys, let's watch the Florida tape real quick. All right, let's watch Missouri and how they've been playing in the last 9 games. Now let's watch what they did to Florida. And you're saying, so you got to take these cats serious. If you don't want to be like Florida and get swept, at Mizzou. And I thought Gavin Casas said something interesting. I've heard things, but we're going to keep it positive. It's just a different place. Like, no offense to Missouri or Columbia, Missouri, or anything like that. It's very odd when you talk about Missouri being in the SEC. I get why Mizzou was brought in. I understand, but it was odd. Absolutely. And they're still an odd fit in the SEC. So when you go there to play, weird things happen in all sports. Oh, we hear football. It's weird to go to Missouri. Basketball, men and women. Missouri's it's a clunky place to play. And baseball. Yeah, you know what you hear about going there to play Missouri. And it's not even about if those teams are really good or not. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. It's just different. And that's another thing. You can't go sideways in this series. You want to walk out of there winning 2 out of 3. Perfect world, you sweep. But you don't want to lose that series. Because then you have Georgia, you have Tennessee. Tennessee's been playing really well. Georgia, and they can get you also. So this is where you don't want to slip up at Missouri. You want to handle your business. All right, one last cut. We'll get to obviously last weekend, Ethan Petrie hit a home run and passed a base runner. He passed Brindling, and then all of a sudden, your home run gets wiped away because you passed a base runner. So Gavin Costas and also Ethan Petrie were both asked about, that little episode. Basically, to the players, are they giving, Petrie some grief? Have they moved on from it? Are they still having fun with it? What's the whole vibe on the Petrie passing a runner on the bases and wiping out his home run?
No. I mean, that was a tough situation. It was 1 out. He hit a super high pop fly. I was on second. Brindling was on first. And it was one of those ones where it was either a home run or it was going to get caught. And if it got caught, then we were going to advance. So we all got kind of jumbled up. But, I mean, it is what it is. Was it 2
Still
RBI?
won the game.
Yeah, we still won the game.
Still won the game, 2 RBI.
2 RBI, so we're gonna leave it as it is.
Either we had a chance to talk to you since Sunday, but the home run that wasn't, are you getting a hard time in the locker room from your guys, or how are people reacting to you?
We're kind of just trying to move on from it, but I got one back today, so it feels good to get that back.
It's funny if you watch the presser. Petrie obviously didn't want to talk about it because again, doesn't happen that often. The last one I remember, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened since, but the one that stuck in my head that from the history books was when, and this is Major League Baseball, Tim McCarver, I believe it was with the Phillies at the time, hit a grand slam home run and passed the base runner. So grand slam wiped off the board. That was years and 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 years ago. It doesn't happen often. It does happen rarely, but not a whole lot. So Petrie just wants to get past it. And it is, you won the game, and that's what matters. Because what if you pass the base runner and the home run gets wiped off the board and you lose by a run? Then it's not yucking it up about it, right? So it was just interesting that the question was asked to Petrie, also asked to Costas, and they both were like, we moved on from it. But I'm sure Petrie got some grief in some way, shape, or form from his teammates, especially when you win the game. You can joke about that stuff when you win the game. If you lose, maybe not so much. All right, I want to switch gears real quick here. We go to Mark Kingston real quick, Corey. Kingston, one thing we didn't get to when we played some Mark Kingston sound in the first hour was about the status of Will Tippett, who was the starting shortstop until injury. Tippett getting hurt was one of the things that kind of went to the lineup change that we see now with Matthew Lecroy moving to short, Gavin Costas going from first to third, Ethan Petrie coming from the outfield to first. So Mark Kingston was asked not just about Will Tippett, but what he thinks about Missouri. And so we'll get to the cut in a second as our cool little machine has gone to sleep. But we'll get to that cut. That cut would be, I believe, cut number 9. If you can get that, Corey. Whenever you're ready, my friend, pop it.
Will Tippett, it's TBD, and Missouri, all our focus was on this game tonight, so we'll get to work tonight and tomorrow, and so I can't speak on Missouri yet. I apologize, but my assistants probably have done some homework on that, but my focus was on this game tonight. I'm not going to jinx it in saying we're peaking right now. I'm just going to say we are improving, we're evolving. I think that's probably the best word is we're evolving. We're turning into what we thought we could be, and I just want to see that continue. I know I say that a lot, but we are improving and we're evolving, and that's what you want to see out of the good teams at the end of the year.
So there's Mark Kingston talking about Will Tippett, a variety of things. Will Tippett is to be determined. So still not a firm timeline or timetable when Will Tippett will be healthy and ready to play again. So you'll continue to see Matthew Lecroy at short, Gavin Costas at third, and Ethan Petrie at first. Second thing was about Missouri. Mark's like, look, man, I was just concentrating on this one. Now I'm good. I'm going to get ready for Missouri. The assistants have done some scouting. Now I'm going to hunker down for Missouri. I just think that tells you, look, East Tennessee State going into the game was like 52 in RPI, 27 wins on the year, and a high-octane offense. Their pitching has been a problem, but their offense scores a ton of runs. So my guess is, Mark Kingston's like, look, we're not playing some middle school team here in the midweek. These guys, if we're not careful, can score a ton of runs, and that's the last thing we want. So now you move on to Missouri. Again, a team that has been struggling. Also, Mark talked about the offense. I love it. I don't want to jinx it because, again, superstition. I don't want to say this out loud. It'll jinx it. But this team, all around last night, in all phases, they were cooking in a midweek win over East Tennessee State. So we'll see what happens this weekend. Again, a series that you should win. You're better than Missouri. Home, road, whatever. You're better than Missouri. You have Georgia, who's going to be a tough series, and Tennessee, which is going to be a tough series coming. This is one you want to win 2 out of 3 at the very least. I'm not saying it's going to be easy because, again, goofy, weird things happen when you go to Columbia, Missouri, but you're just better. And this is a series you want to at least walk out pulling 2 out of 3. I will come back, hit some other things going on in the sports world. Like, very interesting what folks in Philadelphia are doing to stop the Knicks fans from overtaking the Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia for the upcoming Sixer-Knicks playoff game, and a couple other notes from the world of sports coming up. Another big note, kind of world of sports, is our craft beer card. It's back. Okay, 12 craft beer locations are involved in the craft beer card this time. You can spend $30 at each of them. That's a $360 value. Only costs $79. Go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals, snag yourself a craft beer card. Let's come back, continue on with what's going on in the world of sports. What's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions right here on the Halftime Show on the Game. All right, what's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. As we kind of kick through the sports world. All right. NBA playoffs. Game 4 of the Knicks and Sixers series was in Philly at the Wells Fargo Center. Even though if you weren't paying attention to where the game was at and you just turned it on, you're like, wow, that Knick crowd is loud for a home game. And then you find out, no, that game was in Philly. Now, Corey and I were talking. Corey spent a lot of time in New York. The Northeast, when it comes to sports towns, like New York, Philly, Boston, take pride in protecting their house, man. You don't come into their barn and take over in any sport, especially hoops. Well, the Knicks fans took over the Wells Fargo Center in Philly, which didn't make a lot of people. My girlfriend's from Philly. All I heard was cuss words. She was enraged. She wanted to find everybody that sold their tickets to Knicks fans and smack them all. She's like, we don't do that in Philly. And she looked at me. She goes, this isn't Baltimore. Like, whoa, what did I do? So Joel Embiid was among the folks in Philly not very happy that the Knicks and their fans took over the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Here's Embiid post-game after Game 4. Hit it. I mean, look, I love Joel Embiid. Look, I'm not calling out the fans. I'm going to call out the fans. But look, I get it. This is the world we live in, even in great sports towns. You're a Philly sports fan. You've got these Sixer tickets, right, for the playoffs. You think they got no shot to beat the Knicks. You think the season's over. You know, Embiid's playing on one good leg. And you look at the team, they've been, So you're going to make some dough, right? So you sell your tickets to Knicks fans who, by the way, are lathered up with their team and their thought of getting to the conference finals, the NBA finals. And Knicks fans always have this delusion about how good the Knicks are. And plus, costs a heck of a lot less to go to a Sixer game in Philly than a Knicks game at the Garden. So you got this perfect storm, right? And the Knicks fans take over Wells Fargo Center in Philly. And the people in Philadelphia are enraged, right? So they're going to try to put a stop to this for Game 6. Because all of a sudden, Sixers, with that crazy win in Game 5 at the Garden, now are only down 3-2 with a home game in their pocket. If they can win at home and hold their home court, then you got a Game 7 in the Garden. So former minority owner Michael Rubin and the current ownership group in Philadelphia have purchased tickets for Thursday's Game 6 in Philly to try to stop the Knicks fans from taking over, like Game 4. Now, they're going to take the tickets and give them out to, like, first responders and folks like that. They purchased more than 2,000 tickets. They're going to give them to first responders, healthcare professionals, other local Philadelphia-based organizations. Great idea, right? That should do it. What if those people sell the tickets? Just saying. And like Corey and I were talking, we're laughing like, you think that's going to stop Knicks fans? Knicks fans are so rabid right now for the Knicks, they'll still try to find a way to weasel themselves into the Wells Fargo Center. But this is a very interesting story. So we'll see what happens. Game 6, Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center. We'll see how many Knicks fans can weasel their way into the arena. But this isn't over yet. If you follow the NBA, you know Knicks fans, yeah, easier said than done. Spike Lee will find a way. Other quick NBA notes since the playoffs going on last night. Celtics just curb stomped the Heat. 118 to 84. Wasn't as close as the score. Celtics now move on to the next round of the NBA playoffs. Look, to me, and we know Porzingis is whatever right now for Boston, but the Celtics on paper should be playing in the NBA Finals. Will they? I don't know. The Celtics go kooky. I'm trying to be nice in how I say this. The Celtics mentally can be soft. And that could beat them in a 7-game series. Like, for an example, if the Knicks get there, which they very well could, the Knicks mentally are tough. They might not be as good as the Celtics on paper, but mentally, I think the Knicks have a little bit more skins in the game than the Celtics. And, hey, 7-game series sometimes, it can be mental as much as physical. But the Celtics have no business not getting back to the NBA Finals. And they knocked the Heat out without Jimmy Butler and move on. And the Mavericks, Luka Doncic was sick, still found a way to almost go triple-double. Mavericks go to L.A. and beat the Clippers. What do the Clippers always do in the playoffs? Now the Mavericks are up 3-2. Luka was phenomenal inside the three-point line last night. Still can't make a three to save his life in the playoffs, but was really good attacking the basket. Dallas wins. They're up 3-2. They're in control. Game 6 will be back in Dallas. So that's a little quick run on the NBA playoffs from last night. One other note. This is football related. I found it interesting. There was a podcast, a couple Steelers players on a podcast talking about the possibility of Justin Fields, Bears quarterback now in Pittsburgh, could play special teams returning kicks. I don't think that'll happen. But if you put Justin Fields back there to return kicks, what does that tell everybody what you think of Justin Fields? Because you're not going to put a guy you have any value in being your quarterback back there to return kicks. That would tell you and Justin Fields what you think of Justin Fields. I still think that Russell Wilson will be the starter. Who knows as the season goes in Pittsburgh what will happen. But if you start running Justin Fields back there to return kicks, that tells you all you need to know about the thought of the Steelers on Justin Fields. Remember, they already declined his 5th-year option. So it feels like Fields is just there. Hey, let's see what you got for this year, Justin. You might go on the field, you might not. Let's just, we'll just play it by ear. That was kind of an interesting note I saw. All right, again, baseball, Friday, Saturday, Sunday here on the game in Columbia and also in Myrtle Beach. 6:45 pregame tomorrow night at Missouri, weather permitting, all weekend because there's a chance of rain. Saturday coverage starts at 3:45, Sunday pregame at 1:45. Again, in Columbia, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, at Mizzou to face the Tigers. All right, we'll get back. Today is, what is it, May 2nd? Greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. That is next on the halftime show with Terry Ford, with Corey, with Ed. We're all rolling till 3 here on the game. Time for the greatest day in the history of the world, which today is May 2nd. All right, we'll start so the Boston Celtics. You think about the Boston Celtics, right now you think of Jason Tatum. You think of other Celtic greats over the years, Paul Pierce. You think about even going back farther, the late Reggie Lewis. Then you really go to Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, John Havlicek, Bill Russell, Bob Cousy. I mean, 70 years of Celtics. Do you know who has the second highest scoring total in Celtic playoff history for a single game? Isaiah Thomas. You're going, the guy that played for the Pistons? No. Isaiah Thomas, who played his college ball at the University of Washington, by the way. Isaiah Thomas, on this day in 2017, scored 53 points. Second highest point total in a single Celtic playoff game in the team's history. And a Boston win over the Wizards, 129-119. I know you're saying, Tara, I don't know which is more wow to me. The fact that Isaiah Thomas has the second highest single game point total in Celtic history, or the fact the Wizards made the playoffs. This day in 2015, Floyd Mayweather wins a unanimous decision over Manny Pacquiao in a fight that should have been fought years before. In a fight that Pacquiao fought injured. A fight that this is one of those moments in boxing. For me, I love boxing growing up. I grew up with Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, and all those guys. I grew up in a golden era. Well, they all fought each other, by the way. Thomas Hearns. The Hagler-Hearns first round is the most iconic first round maybe in my life of boxing. They beat the snot out of each other for 3 minutes. So I grew up with Roberto Duran. I watched all these guys fight each other. They were Hall of Fame boxers. And then we got to that point in boxing history. Everybody's got their own camp. Everybody's got their own promoter. Everybody's got their own this. Then all of a sudden, fights didn't happen. Or like Floyd Mayweather, I'm protecting my zero. Pacquiao and Mayweather, and it's both camps' fault. I'm not blaming one or the other. Should have fought when they were both more in their prime. That's a fight we want to see. Not two dudes outside of their prime. That's one of those things that started to turn me away from boxing with stuff like this. This fight was an embarrassment. This fight, 5 or 6 years before, would have been phenomenal. Instead, you had two dudes past their prime. One was injured. And that's one of those, if you paid for it, you're like, give my money back. Give me my money back. Also on this day, 2010, some dude named LeBron James became the 10th player in NBA history to win consecutive MVP awards. Still rolling at almost age 40. Look, I don't get in GOAT conversations. I don't do that. I don't do Mount Rushmores, all that ridiculousness. But I have never in my lifetime seen a guy pushing 40 years old playing as good as LeBron James does. And I'm a Michael Jordan guy. I grew up on MJ. But what LeBron James is doing, pushing 40, is individually is unbelievable. Almost a historic day in baseball in 2002, but could have been even more. A guy named Mike Cameron was playing for the Seattle Mariners. Good power, excellent defensive center fielder. Had some good years offensively in the majors. Cameron hits 4 home runs and almost hit a 5th. The ball was on the warning track or the wall, if my memory serves me. In Seattle's 15-4 win over the White Sox, just missed the 5th home run in that game. 1999 on this day, John Elway announced his retirement from the NFL. Elway, of course, got 2 rings late in his career with the Broncos after losing, 4 Super Bowls? When they were never the better team in any of those, by the way. And they finally got 2 at the end of his career to end up a Hall of Fame run in Denver. On this day in 1978, Earl Campbell, running back from the University of Texas, was the first pick of the NFL draft by the Houston Oilers. I'm going to tell you, if you've never seen Earl Campbell, go to YouTube and just Google Earl Campbell highlights. Dude was just an absolute beast running the football. He had a Monday Night Football game against, I think, the Dolphins, where it felt like 17,000 yards. Earl Campbell ran over people, ran around people. There's a highlight. There's a linebacker with the L.A. Rams named Isaiah Robertson. Earl Campbell was near the goal line, cut upfield, and ran flat over Isaiah Robertson. To this day, if Isaiah Robertson takes off his shirt, there's a Houston Oiler helmet in his chest. Earl Campbell was one of a kind, man. Earl Campbell's first 4 or 5 years in the league were unreal. Campbell, but here, ready for this? His first 5 years, he had over 1,500 carries. You want to talk about a dude that was worn out after 5 years in the league? And obviously after those 5 years, his production started to go down. But Earl Campbell, those first 5 years was something else. Picked this day in 1978 as the number one pick in the NFL draft by the Houston Oilers. Going way back in the day for one, way back in the day. We talked about this earlier in the week. In 1939, Lou Gehrig played his last of the 2,130 consecutive games. This was the day in 1939 that Gehrig was out of the lineup. That ended the streak of 2,130 consecutive regular season games. Today was that day, and we talked a lot about it earlier in the week with Cal Ripken breaking that streak and things of that nature. And Keith Olbermann basically going on SportsCenter and saying Cal Ripken should play in 2,130 consecutive games and then sit out, so he's tied with Gehrig. And, of course, everybody went, Keith, you sober? Nobody's doing that. So this is the official day where that phenomenal historic streak by Lou Gehrig ended, and it lasted up until the mid-'90s with Cal Ripken Jr. So there is the greatest day in the history of the world, May 2nd, brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. All right, we'll get back in here, wrap this baby up, our final segment, go back to some Gamecock talk, as obviously a big baseball weekend is coming up against Missouri on the road, where you got to do some damage, and you should at least pull 2 out of 3. And also, we might yip with Jay Phillips if he shows up. Terry Ford, it's the halftime show with Corey and Ed Bird keeping us rolling up until 3 here on the game. All right, this time, instead of our Firehouse Sub text of the hour, we're going to do our Firehouse Sub Twitter polls of the hour. Got a couple we want to get to here in a second. First of all, remember, big series with Missouri coming up this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, there is a chance of rain, so we'll see how all that goes. But Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if weather holds, 6:45 pregame. Friday, 3:45. Our coverage starts Saturday, and then pregame rolls 1:45 on Sunday. You can hear it right here in Columbia at 107.5 and our Myrtle Beach affiliate at 100.3. Again, a series you need to handle. You got to win 2 out of 3. Be great to sweep, but you just don't want to go to Missouri and lose a series. They're not a very good baseball team this year. You need to take advantage of it. Because then you have better teams in Georgia and Tennessee you'll be taking on. If you can go 5-4, that'll put you in that 16-win spot, and you should be hosting a regional. So we shall see. But again, our coverage here in Myrtle Beach, Friday, 6:45 pregame there. All right, couple Twitter X polls. We'll start off with a normal sporty sport one in the words of our buddy Preston Thorne. Poll question of the day. Now that spring practice is over, what position group are you most concerned about going into 2024 at the Gamecocks? Wide receiver, O-line, quarterback. Other. O-line far and away wins this one at 65%. Far and away. Wide receiver at 22%. Quarterback at 11%. Other is 2%. So, not a surprise. If you asked me to vote on this one, I'd probably vote O-line myself. Just because, remember, last year it cratered the offense. The injury problems along the offensive line, which forced guys to play that really Shane Beamer and his staff didn't want to play, like the Sidney Fugars, the Trees, the Baws, guys like that who you did not want to play. Jackson Hughes. You were forced to because of the injuries. And you didn't have experienced depth behind the starters, so you were throwing guys in that really shouldn't have been playing. And then the spring game, look, we said this, West, Chris, myself, Chris Miller, we did the spring game, we talked about the offensive line because the defensive fronts, as the spring game went along, the defensive front started to take over and win the battle against the O-lines. But the offensive lines were split. It wasn't like the first-string offensive line was playing against, it wasn't ones versus ones. Offensive line was split up, and so was the defense, to be fair, but offensive line obviously is continuity. One vision, they call it, one set of eyes. But when you see the spring game and the offensive lines on both teams struggle, the struggles you had on the offensive line last year, the year before the O-line was better, but still there were games where the offensive line had their troubles. So O-line, no shock here that the offensive line is sitting at 65%. Far and away leading. Wide receiver, 22%. Quarterback, 11%. Other, 2%. One we brought up, and again, South Carolina's had a great tradition of kickers. And Mitch Jeter was just the latest in the long line. But now, Mitch Jeter took off in the transfer portal. Feels like Alex Herrera will be the kicker. But everybody automatically thinks, it's going to be fine. And it might be. But that might be under the other category. How you feel about the kicking situation. Usually South Carolina's kickers, thumbs up. But Herrera is unknown and untested as being the number one kicker. So we'll see. But that was one interesting Twitter X poll. The other one was just fun. And this one was, I got to find it here. Okay. This time of year, because it becomes a little slow, besides Gamecock baseball, here in Columbia, there's no football going on till SEC Media Days, talking season. No basketball, men's or women's. Baseball is, running to the end of the regular season. Then you have the postseason. Poll question of the day, this time of year, what are you most invested in? NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, MLB regular season, or binging TV shows? Binging TV shows won at 36%. Regular season baseball at 32%, NBA playoffs 21%, Stanley Cup playoffs at 11%. Some of the answers we had, college baseball, off-season movement, and the other college sports. Soccer got some love. all the soccer, MLS, EPL, Champions League, Copa, Euros, Olympics, all happening this summer. Another one, MLS and Super Rugby. Rugby's cool to watch, man. Rugby's, you don't know what's going on, but it's fun to watch. College baseball. None of the above should have been a selection. A couple of WNBAs, some golf. So thank you very much for your comments there. But binging TV shows at 36% won in that. Just now myself, again, I'm probably watching all these in some way, shape, or form because I love baseball, the NBA playoffs, and the Stanley Cup playoffs are very underrated. And how fantastic the Stanley Cup playoffs are. It might be the best professional playoff season in pro sports because it is just those guys would cut each other with their skate blades to win the Stanley Cup. You get the playoff beards. You get those guys probably haven't showered for months. The Stanley Cup playoffs are phenomenal. We appreciate you jumping in on our Twitter polls like always, Twitter, X, whatever the case. There was one cut, and Corey, I want to get to this real quick. Dawn Staley was on the radio station yesterday during the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Again, thank you very much, Dawn, for jumping on. And the one question they asked her, we didn't get to pop this up yesterday when we were playing some Dawn Staley sound. I want to get to it. Did Dawn Staley, what was her thought process of building a program when she showed up in 2008? About basically, did you envision this when you first started coaching the Gamecocks? You can go ahead and hit it, Corey.
No, I really, like my cup runneth over when it comes to the success that we've had. You know, although you work for it, you know, you really, we put in a lot of work for the type of success that we've had, but everybody does. A lot of people work really hard and they don't get one. We're very fortunate to get three. And you have to, again, reflect on the type of players, the type of parents, the type of fans, the type of administrators. Like, we can't be as successful as we've been without the help from like all those entities, because you can actually, as administrators, you can do some things that will damper your workplace, and you can damper the spirit of people who are in the workplace. You can have fans who, you know, think we are I mean, they can pick apart our flaws. They cannot like the makeup of our team and not show us the love that they've given us. I mean, we've had great players come and great players go, and although sometimes, you know, that leaves people to put a dark cloud over our program, but we've been able to survive it, and we've been able to survive it because ultimately I just want, and not just me, but our coaching staff, we just want young people to be successful. So everything we do is for their success. Sometimes that's believable, sometimes it's not. But I think if you judge us off of our body of work, and that's what you have to judge someone off of, not one bad day, not one great day, but the body of work. And our body of work speaks to just really having good people and treating our players with the ultimate respect. And that's it. We've treated people well.
So I think it's interesting, Dawn, you know, did you see this? Was this like your big grand plan when you showed up in 2008? And she's like, no, not really. I mean, people always want to be great, right? I mean, you would think. You're a head coach, you take a gig, you want to make this, you want to cut down nets. It's always your ultimate goal. When you're, you know, they talk about, you know, motivation. People say you envision things, you close your eyes and you see it. And then when you see it in your mind, then you have a better chance of making it happen and all that other mumbo jumbo. But, you know, realistically, you don't come in saying, I'm going to make my program the best program in America. You want to, but that's way down the road, even if you can make it happen. Because we can count them on one hand, right? Obviously, Tennessee dominating with Pat Summitt. You had Geno dominating at UConn. Right now, Dawn Staley sits the best program in America with South Carolina. You had other really good programs like Stanford, for an example. Maryland's had their moment. Baylor with Kim Mulkey. But, the idea, we want to be the best program in America. I mean, you'd love to get there. Sure, you're not going to turn it down. But to think that when you first take over a program that's never been close to that type of level, you slow your roll. You want to, again, it's baby steps, right? And the other thing to what Dawn talked about is culture. It just comes out to culture. And I know whenever we say culture, people roll their eyes. Yeah, culture, whatever, man. But culture matters in every walk of life. It just does. Everybody wants to be part of good culture. Nobody wants to be part of bad culture. So the culture at South Carolina that Dawn has built, you don't see a lot of girls go in the transfer portal at South Carolina. I mean, there are some. I mean, it just happens. You're never going to keep everybody. But most stay at South Carolina, even though they could probably go pick up more minutes and put up better numbers somewhere else because of the culture. And they know they're going to be in a position to win. And Dawn's players go to the WNBA and play internationally. So, I mean, yeah, Dawn probably didn't see this in 2008, but, I mean, obviously what she achieves has been unbelievable. Ed Bird, Corey, nice job, guys. Keeping me going, made me sound like I know what I'm talking about. We appreciate you both very much. Elijah, Jay, Elijah, whichever order you want to put into it, the post-game show coming up next, right here on your home of the Gamecocks in Columbia, Myrtle Beach, and also our affiliate in Florence. It's The Game.